Peace, family. Welcome to another episode of Underground Railroad Radio. This is your host, Brother Rich. I got a special show tonight with a special individual. This is this individual's first time on my platform, at least as far as this whole YouTube era I've been on. Brother Aseer, the Duke of Chairs. Welcome to the show, brother.
Peace, my brother. Peace. Thanks for having me. Peace to all of you and the planet Earth.
Yeah, good to have you. I remember when you first exploded onto the scene years ago, and you came out with the Science of Superheroes when you was breaking down the science behind the comic books, and you just revolutionized the whole thought process, the whole paradigm of thought process. You know?
Thank you, man. Thank you for really giving me that respect, man. A lot of people, acting like that didn't happen. I really appreciate that.
No, it happened. I was there. It happened, man. So you definitely, I remember you did you definitely did your thing with that one, man. I'm sure the people can't wait to hear the Star Wars decoded or something like that, you know.
Yeah, but word so much with that, right?
Yeah, but we have a very serious show tonight. This topic, Brother Aseer, it's probably one of the most, to myself and to many people I've talked to, and I want the family to know how serious I am about this topic. It's probably one of the most confusing topics in this whole quote-unquote African-American paradigm that we exist under. I mean, you have top scholars that will be in complete arguments with each other about this subject because our whole paradigm is based on this Pan-African paradigm for the most part.
That's right.
And for those that know the brother Aseer, he has some amazing information when it comes to our Moorish legacy, the fact that we are indigenous to America. In fact, what's funny, brother Aseer, when I talk to some of the what I consider to be the top Moorish scholars in New York, they always say, "Yo, you gotta holler at the brother Aseer for that one." They always say, yo, you gotta holler at the brother Aseer. You know, that brother would know about that. So I don't want people to think this is just an ordinary show where we're talking ordinary black means evil type. No. We're gonna get very, very, very historical on today's show. It's not just about how not to pay taxes. No, we're getting very, very historical because it's important for us to know our true bloodline at this point in time, especially in 2015 going into 2016. Brother Aseer, I guess to start off the show, Farrakhan had what made me think about contacting you and say I got to get the brother Aseer on the show. Is that Farrakhan at the Justice or Else March, Million Man March 20th anniversary, he had some Native American brothers and sisters come on to the podium to speak. And they got a lot of people talking about, man, fuck them. Some people like, fuck them, we not Native American. They helped enslave us too. Some people like, yo, we are the Native Americans. I need to get some clarification, brother. I know you got the documents. I know you got the historical evidence. I know you've done the countless years of research. Brother, I need you just to go in depth before I ask any questions. I need you, what's going on with our history in America? Because it's so confusing at this point. Where do we as so-called black Americans stand in reference to where we come from in this country? Are we indigenous? Did we come from Africa? Did we come from Asia? Are we Asiatic? Are we all over the place? Please just start to elaborate on that for me, brother Aseer.
It's a great question, man. And again, thanks for having me on, and thanks for all of the support from the people you've spoken to, as well as the people you will. To really put it bluntly, man, you got to understand that we have been, the United States is approximately 239, 240 years old, right? Of that 239, 240 years, it's been at war for 222 or 223 years. So do the math. That means that there's only been a certain maybe 15 years, 20 years of peace. And I don't even know when that ever was, because for as long as I can remember, they've been fighting somebody. So what that says is that the nature of the past history, or let's say the nature of the past 200 and plus years has been really of conflict and confrontation and confusion. So whenever you have a situation where a group of people who are not from a place can go to another place, claim what the people themselves were, and then make those people alien to their land, you're dealing with a form of genocide that is almost unspeakable, you know? Mm-hmm. However, when it comes to the actual so-called history of the original man and original woman in America, what we're talking about is the fact that, believe it or not, there is a specific identity that was held by our ancestors and parents and stuff, whether they knew it or not. But the problem is, your history, nationality is also tied into your birthright and inheritance. So if I want to get you to devalue what you have, I have to first make you think that what you have is valueless. Mm-hmm. Right? You understand what I'm saying? So what that means then is that the trick was never about whether or not you came from Africa or not. The biggest trick is the fact that you've always been in Africa, because according to most people in the know, Africa is a collective or word of art or a symbolic word that really means the earth itself. Mm-hmm. So when you're calling yourself an African American specifically, what you're doing is declaring that you really are of two continents. But that is not itself a nationality. If you go on to the almanacs of any nation, you will never see the term black or white in any of those national archives and things like that, unless you're dealing with the United States. And that's because in the United States, you have to be a color. You understand? Because the United States functions under something called colorable law. And in a colorable law-based system, that which is law is not. That which appears to be law but is not is actually the law. So the law says that if you exist here, you have to be a U.S. citizen. That's not the law. That's what they tell people. You see what I'm saying? Because they know that not only so-called black people or so-called African American people don't know who they are. White folk and the rest of these people don't know who they are either. So what you're dealing with is a melting pot of confusion that is perpetually filled up with more confusion every 25 years. Meaning every 25 to 35, let's say 50 years, the original people or the people that were here first always have to be relabeled as something else. Like when you was a kid, right? When we was growing up, or at least when I was growing up, because we're peers, I'm a little older. So when I was growing up, there was no such thing as, like, I didn't know nothing about a Middle Passage, for instance. When I was growing up, it was the triangle trade, right? Okay. That's what it was in the history book. Then maybe 25 years, 15 years after that, it became the Middle Passage. Then maybe a couple of years after that, it became the transatlantic slave trade, right? And so what that showed me growing up was that there was different phases of this thing that they called slavery, right? However, when I researched the word slavery, I found out that the root of that word was Slav, which is Slovakian or Slovenian, which means to serve or to be a serf, which means like a slave. And it also said the slave, or the term Slovak or Slovenian, meaning slave, meaning to serve, was also the nationality of people from a place called Slovenia. So what that told me was then, if that's the case, then how are these people that are not from Slovenia, so-called black people, how are they given the name of a nationality of a people who were always servile when they never even from this place? The same way that you could have a group of people And like I said, you go from calling them what? Indians to niggers or Negroes, and then from niggers to Negroes and Indians to contraband. Like, they've been calling black people crazy stuff. Coons, right? All Sambo, like all of these different derogatory terms, all the way up to this term African American. Most people who fight for that word don't even realize that that word of art was invented or was coined by people like Jesse Jackson at a specific time, date, within our lifetime.
Yeah, I remember Bobby Hemmings said that. You're right. Yeah,
right, within our lifetime. So what that says is that that's like people who call themselves Arabs today. That term Arab was coined in 1914 by a guy named T.E. Lawrence during the time that they were trying to fight against the waning Turkish Empire. So they only are calling themselves that, a word that's only been maybe 80 plus, maybe not even 100 years old. So if you are an immortal people, how can you let somebody that is not immortal, that is not infinite, label you as something else? Here's the other question. If not all of the records that you read upon different empires that existed in the world, specifically let's deal with, let's say, the Moorish Empire here in America, in the Americas. Whenever you read about the Moors, especially in history books or dealing with the actual laws, statutory laws and stuff that was put on the books in the so-called colonies, the only people that have carte blanche that nobody could enslave was the Moorish people. And according to those documents and those records, those people were always of a darker hue, copper colored, and were always basically revered, meaning that they had something referred to as most favored nation status, meaning that no other nation was allowed to intentionally invade any province that was associated with these people. So if that's the case, and these people had this not only over here, but over there in so-called what we now today call Africa, Europe, Asia, Russia, there's not any place in the world that I have not researched, that I have not found a Moorish presence where people was referring to themselves as that. India, Cambodia, Indonesia, Indochina, like all of these places, right? And the wild thing is that everybody knows. It's just that when you bring that type of information here, what you're dealing with is the fact that your nationality or your true nationality, your true indigenous bloodline is also wrapped up in an inheritance and a birthright that nobody else got but you. The problem is you have been made to devalue it and not understand it in its truest perspective, because we have been fed a constant diet of hate the white man, hate America, hate Africa, hate anything that is contrary to what we've been told. But what if the people who told you that you wasn't from there actually received checks and actually swore oaths not to tell you what you really are, so they could walk around and be you and take advantage of your birthright and inheritance without you catching on to it? Because what you have been taught is that you're not from here. You've been taught that you're an alien. You've been taught that you're from Africa. But you've been in this game a long time, right? Mm-hmm. Name one African ancestor that you got directly that you know of.
I don't.
Can you name one? Can you name what part of Africa that ancestor came from? Well, who in your family had Native American or Indian ancestry? You could probably tell me.
I was about to say, when we was young, we used to always hear, so-and-so got Indian in them.
I got Indian in my family, right?
We always heard those tales. We always heard
that, right? Yeah. I just did a class on that. And I'm entitled the class that, the lesson that I got Indian in my family. Because, like, for instance, if I ask you right now, name me 5 kings from Africa. Sunni Ali, Muhammad Ismail, who else? Timbuktu. Who else we know from Africa was a king? Abraham, right? Solomon, right? Like, my point is you could name people, right? Name me 5 kings from America. You can't. And I would ask you to ask any of these so-called black African, whatever scholars they call themselves, to do the same thing. They probably can't. Why? Because to the layman, America don't have kings, right? According to the white man, what? White man say what? He came here and what? Civilized. There was nobody here. It was a bunch of wild Indians, right? Mexican-looking Indians running around here, didn't know the value of the land, right? We killed them, and then we brought Africans here to build it up. Then we killed them, and then we ran America, right? That's how it goes, right? Basically, right? That's basically how they do it, right? And they make some movies and write some books and get some white people to go on National Geographic and say the same thing. Then that's that, right? Right. And that's the problem. The problem is nobody looks into anything other than what they are told to look into. So if you don't know that the term, like when they say "we the people" in the United States in the preamble for the Constitution, that actually refers to a group of people who were called that, who today we would call the Delaware, the Lenape, or the Renape, and that they were also responsible for the founding of the United States government. Not only them, but 48 other states in the 13-zone empire. That sounds crazy. But it sounds crazy because again, if you want to get black people to believe something, tell it to a white man and then bring the white man to them to tell them, because that's when they're going to believe it. You know what I'm saying? Because they have been domesticated to become aliens to the place that they're from. So because they came out with something called Roots, I don't know if you remember that movie. Right. They came out with a movie called Roots, a miniseries, right? When we was young, and I'm old enough to remember when that came out. I remember that when it came out, I really knew nothing about racism or even classism at that point. After Roots, see what I'm saying? After the miniseries, it went from Monday to Friday. By that next Monday now, when I'm in class, everybody now talking about how we were slaves from Africa. You understand what I'm saying? So, again, are we slaves because, one, we could never be slaves, because genetically we don't have the genetics of Slovenian. So that means when you say that this person who was a melanated person was a slave, what you're doing is perpetuating white supremacy. Because what you're basically doing is denationalizing them and making them into a servile nationality, right? Because you're calling them a slave. That's like if I was to see you, Rich, one day, and I say, hey, you a Mexican. You know what I'm saying? You look at me like I'm crazy. Yeah. Because that's not your nationality. That's not what you are. You see what I'm saying? But calling them a slave is just like calling them an African. Because when I speak to Africans and I ask them where they from, you know what they tell me? What? I'm from Senegal. I'm from Cameroon. I'm from Central African Republic. I'm from Mauritania. I'm from wherever. They're from a place. That's a country, meaning that they're telling me what their nationality is. They don't say, oh, I'm African. They only say that when they come over here. You see what I'm saying? When they come over here, they become African. But you cannot be an African because you cannot be an entire continent. It's not like when you get off the plane or like in the cartoon, there's a whole big word across the whole continent that say Africa. That's not real. So why would you or I or anybody with common sense allow ourselves to be identified as something that not only is not real, but is fictitious? The reason why we would do that is because we do not believe that we are anything other than what we've been told we are. And the people who've been telling us and feeding us this garbage is the people that look exactly like us. Because go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't mean to cut you off, but I was getting ready to say, you have some prominent, some top scholars, some amazing scholars who supports the Pan-African paradigm. So when a brother such as yourself or other brothers come with this information, it's like, these brothers are heroes. These brothers that taught us who we are and to be proud that we're African. So when you come with this information, it's like we have to...
Not to cut you away, look at it like this. We all like Dr. Ben, right? We all love Dr. Ben, right? Mm-hmm. How many people knew that Dr. Ben had a degree in Moorish science from Barcelona University? How many people knew that? Moorish science and history.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knew that, right? How come Dr. Ben never told you about that? You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You read John Henry Clark's book, right?
Mm-hmm.
He talked about blacks and stuff like that or whatever. But have you ever read any J.A. Rogers books?
Yeah.
Because when you read J.A. Rogers' book, Sex and Race, Volume 1, Superman and Man, you know, those type of books, predate half of the people that we like today. But nobody talk about him. Just like we didn't hear about Noble Joe Ali the whole time growing up as black kids, up until we got to a certain age. Why is that? You done heard about everybody else in the world when it comes to black history, right? But how come you never heard about this dude? This dude walked right next to Marcus Garvey.
Yeah. We heard about Garvey.
How come they never tell you about him? How come? But if you go to different places in the world, people know all about him. I was in Japan, man, and they knew about the prophet. How come you don't know? Because you've been trained, just like I was trained, to ignore what's in front of my face for the hope that somebody will come and basically save me. Just like they said, black people became Christian by force. But why? Was it just about worshiping a white Jesus? Was it really just about that? No, it wasn't. Because what we have to understand is that the way we look at religion today is not how religion was back in the days. Religion back in the days was looked at as a political allegiance, the same way you have Republican and Democrat. And it just so happened that the Republicans, the elephants, the descendants of Carthage, the descendants of Hannibal, the Carthaginians, the so-called Phoenicians, the so-called Etruscans, the so-called Fomorians, the so-called Minoans, the so-called Macedonians, all of these people I'm talking to you about are Moors, and they were referring to themselves as that at the time. There is an inscription. One of the oldest inscriptions in America is the Born Stone in Coxsacommack Bay, in the Chesapeake Bay. And it has the Born Stone that was placed there however many thousands of years ago by Hannibal's great-great-grandfather, Hanno Bay, which annexed this part of the world with the old Moorish Empire from the other side of the world. But the problem, again, is that we've been taught that we were what? Egyptians. What else? But what did the Egyptians call themselves? Did they call themselves Egyptians? Because when you read the E. Wallace Budge translation, it says that they refer to themselves as Ta-Amur, which would basically break down to Ta-Amore, which Ta meaning the, Mur or more meaning Mur or more, meaning the Moors. So that's right there in the translation. If you want to get the hieroglyph for it, it's an owl with the Aries sign on the forehead, standing on top of a mouth with what looks like the sign for Aquarius, the scraggly line on the right side of it. That's how it was said in what we call ancient Kemet. Kemet is not even that's another word of art. That's an art word created by Pan-Africanism. That word is not even 50 years old. Well, that word alone, and that doesn't even describe the people. That describes the geographic location of today, of what we call Egypt. So again, these are questions that I would ask some of these same scholars you talking about, and they would look at me with the gas face, like, oh, well, I don't know. So again, if you don't know that, how you out here telling all of these people that they African? You dig what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. According to one of the oldest maps in the world, the Piri Reis map, it basically has everything listed from the west of Mali all the way to California. And that was called the Maghreb al-Aqsa, also known as the Morocco of the farthest west. This is in documents over 1,300 years old, man. That's right there. That's in some of these same books. So when I used to ask myself, well, if I'm seeing this, I know I'm not crazy. How I know they had to see it. You did? But then when I realized it, I looked at it, I said, well, how many of these black scholars actually have a nationality? How are you sitting there talking to me about African and Pan-Africanism and all that, and you still listed as a 14th Amendment United States citizen? That don't make sense. The only reason I could talk about Moorish history and culture and science and all that is because I know that it's all encompassing, that it's all the same thing. So I could look at a rock, I could look at a picture of Selassie with a fez on, and I know that's a fez. It's a golden fez. But a roster will look at the same picture and say, oh, that's a crown. And we're both right. The only difference is I'm looking at what it really is in the context of it dealing with a nationality, a birthright, and an inheritance. He's looking at it from the perspective of, oh, that's the King of Kings. You see? So it's perspective. It's how you were brought up in this. And pan anything. Pan means what? And racism and stuff? Okay. So, again, that means that this term that we're using to describe an aspect, right, has a dual meaning. So that would then also mean African has a dual meaning, right? That would also mean American has a dual meaning, right? Because the same people that's given us these terms to identify with is the same people, right, who have put themselves under the same spell. So what we know as the Pan-African movement came after what was called the Pan-Americanist movement. And that movement was spearheaded way back in the 30s and all that with Marcus Garvey. Because Marcus Garvey was talking about nationality. He said the one thing that the Negro lacks altogether is to attain his own birthright and his own nationality. There was no other people in the world labeled Negro but the so-called Black American, and then that spread to everybody else. Why? Because the so-called Black American is indigenous or autochthon, meaning from the soil. Whenever you look at the old seals from all of these different places in the United States, what you see? You see a Moor, a.k.a. Indian, right, wearing loincloths, holding arrows with feathers in his hair and all of that. And what he's wearing came from the land that he's around him, meaning that everything that he got on, he basically got from his land. Mm-hmm. That's why that's always the symbol. But because the white man called them Indians, you see what I'm saying? We got to believe what he say because he would know because deep down we feel like he conquered us. Would a Pan-Africanist label themselves a white supremacist? No, not knowingly. But when you tell people constantly that they were brought over here on slaves from Africa on slave ships, and over 2 million or 200 million of them died on slave ships, you're lying to them. You know why? Because I ain't never seen in my years of life a whole slave ship intact. Have you?
No.
Never. Of all of the books, of all of the scholars, I have yet to see one actually produce a slave ship for me to walk in on, see the chains on the ground and everything else. But these same people can show me a dinosaur from 65 million years ago? Come on, man. Matter of fact, the dinosaur that you showing me is not even real because dinosaurs come from what? Meaning like where do we get the bones from? The bones come from a what? A fossil, right?
The fossil, yeah.
What's a fossilologist? So I was all wrapped up in the Stegosaurus and the Brontosaurus and the Dominosaurus and the Tyrannosaurus Rex and all of that, right? And I'm going to I'm going to the museum and looking at the bones and all that. Wow, these things was huge and all of that, right? Mm-hmm. But a fossil is a rock. So what they're telling me when they show you a dinosaur bone, what they're doing is basically saying that, okay, you know what a fossil is? A fossil would be this. You walking down the street one day, right, and it's concrete, right? And then you step in the wet concrete, take your foot out. Now there's an indentation in the concrete, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, 15,000 years ago, somebody finds that concrete, right? And they look at that foot and they say, wow, this is a foot from somebody from 2015, 2016, right? Now turn that footprint that you've seen into a whole person. How do you do that? How do you do that? If you can't even tell me if you can't even tell me where a tree comes from, how are you going to make a whole dinosaur out of an indentation in the ground? That don't make no sense. You understand what I'm saying? I'm talking about rational thought, man. Mm-hmm. Let's take it out of the black and white thing. Let's take it out of the Moorish African thing. Let's just bring it down to common human sense. How can you make a 20-foot dinosaur out of a bunch of plaster? Because that's what fossils are. You understand? Mm-hmm. You see where I'm going with? You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is that historically, everybody is under the same spell because everybody is eating the same lie and then vomiting it up like it's the truth. It's not. If you a Pan-Africanist scholar, then that means you're supposed to go to Africa, you're supposed to find your roots like Alex Haley and the rest of these niggas did, right? And then you're supposed to come back with some sort of African nationality back to these so-called Negroes that you say came from there and now say, hey, brothers and sisters, I did it. I went there. I found where I came from. I did this. I did that.
Well, what do you think? Go ahead. No, go ahead. I was going to say, well, with that being said, what do you think about the DNA test that I believe Henry Louis Gates, he had a program on TV.
Oh,
and he would do it on Oprah and all of them, and he would say,
but what you got to remember, you cannot believe anything a Mason tell you, man. They done sworn oaths to lie. And research the man, Henry Louis Gates. He is a shining example of the honorary Prince Hall. And these are the same brothers, upright and all, that have agreed to keep your history secret. And so they're going to put out there all types of other stuff with the DNA and all of that and all that. Screw Henry Louis Gates. Go to a website called 23andMe, get your own DNA done, and what you're going to find is going to astound you. You're not even going to have as much African DNA that you think you got. It's called 23andMe.com.
Okay.
Check it out. Do it yourself. You're going to come back with all types of DNA, and it's going to be a section of the DNA where it come back. The listing for it is going to be unknown, meaning they don't even know what this DNA inside of you is. So you mean to tell me then there's a whole aspect of my genetic lattice, my helix that you cannot identify, but you're going to identify me as an African? You're going to identify me as a slave? Look at the history. The white man makes the delineation right there. He said that there was slavery. He said that there was African slavery, and then he said there was Negro slavery. So what that say? That say there's three different types of slaves, right? Mm-hmm. But of course, black people, they want to be the perpetual victim, right? So they're going to claim all three. Come on, man. If the United States, again, is 239 years old and has been at war for 220 years, Pan-Africanists been telling me that I've been enslaved for over 400 years in this country, right? Didn't they tell you that? Mm-hmm. So you tell me, riddle me this, Batman. How are you enslaved longer than the country existed? And you wasn't from here. They said that they enslaved you here in America. They didn't say that they enslaved you in Africa. They said that they kidnapped you from Africa and brought you to America and enslaved you here. So if that's the case, then that would mean that the slavery started with the United States Corporation founding, right? So how can you be in bondage longer than the country existed? Does that make sense?
Well, you know, I said Columbus Day just passed, and I always heard stories from the Moors telling me that the Moors helped Columbus navigate to America. What can you tell me about the Moors' connection to Christopher Columbus?
This is how it went down, man. And remember, you heard it here first. Well, heard it here on the brother show, because I got DVDs and stuff we did on it or whatever. It basically went like this. From time immemorial, we had an empire that spanned the entire world, because at one time, all the continents were together. We existed before that. Okay? there's never been a time that you haven't existed if you believe in the Most High, because the Most High is beyond immortal. Therefore, anything that existed in the mind of the Most High became what we know as creation. So that means you name one thing in the world that manifested without thinking about it first. Nothing. So that then means that in the mind's eye of the Creator, we have always existed, which means that we will always exist. Right? Mm-hmm. Once we downgrade it into physicality or whatever, let's go 1,000 years ahead, up to the time of, let's say, 1492. Now, 1492, what you had was the Moorish Empire now going into a fractured sense and is now being absorbed and turned into what we will refer to as the Osmanli or Ottoman Empire, which was a continuation of the original Moorish Empire that spanned itself from the time even before what we know as Carthage and Hannibal, right? So when I'm talking about the Moorish Empire, I'm talking about the ancient Egyptian Empire. I'm talking about pre-dynastic and post-dynastic Egypt. I'm talking about Babylon. I'm talking about Elam. I'm talking about all the so-called Aegean Peloponnesian states. I'm talking about the Moors in South America, the Olmecs and them. I'm talking about all of these people. Because what we do is we separate ourselves from our people in our own mind. So you can walk right down the street and see an Indian man, and he darker than you. He's darker than Khalid, but you look at him like he's an Indian, and he looks at you like you're a Black American. That means that y'all both are practicing white supremacy, because what you are not seeing, again, is the fact that what binds us together is the fact that we got this thing that everybody wants, but everybody want to act like they don't want, i.e. melanin. So by 1492, the empire is fractured. So you have somebody named Queen Isabella, who was a Castilian. Castilians were basically, remember, the Moors went up into Spain. That's another thing. When they say that the Moors from North Africa went into Spain, right? Mm-hmm. We today think North Africa is just the northern portion of Africa. But I just told you, under the Piri Reis map, the map of the empire, anything west of Mali was northern and western Africa. Or Northwest Africa. So that means over here. So when they talk about the Moors from North Africa, they talk about those of us from over here and those of them from over there in what they call the Barbary states, which was Morocco, Tunis, Algiers, and Tripoli. All of us moved up into Rome, into so-called Europa, and basically shut it down. We shut down the Roman Empire altogether. It was us on the northwestern, southwestern shores, and then in the far east, that was the Caliphate, and in the far east, you had what was called the Khanate, which was Timur, who they called Tamerlane, Genghis Khan, Kublai Khan, Attila the Hun, the rest of them. So we shut them down, right? So there was no nobility in Europe at all. From 385 BC, the fall of Rome, all the way up to 1492, there was no direct monarchy. The closest thing you had to that was a Moorish contingent of Moorish Christians or Coptic Christians called the Holy Roman Empire, which was founded in 962 under Otto I and Edith. Again, jet black Moors who had pledged fealty, meaning respect to the Moors of the greater Islamic empire. So these Muslims basically ran everything and basically rocked everything up to 1492. So all of the people today that we call Spanish, who are over there today, those are not the original Spaniard people. The original Spaniards are the people today we would call Puerto Rican, Dominican, Bolivian, Honduran, all these type of people. Those were the people who the Moors fell to, believe it or not. But of course, because Caucasian people who call themselves Italian and they're there today, we think that they always been there. Wrong. So what winds up happening is in 1492, Isabella winds up receiving a bunch of money from a Moorish family, a dirty Moorish family called the Medicis, who were Deys, D-E-Y. And Medicis fronted 15 million levire to Isabella, so that way she could buy or purchase the kingdom of Granada from the then King Al-Ghazi Il, also known as Boabdil in English history. And he called for the expulsion of his own people due to his own greed from taking that money. So what that did was those Moors who were already there, they were the ones who occupied and held the trade routes to those of us over here. So at this time, the Medicis, now that they had control through Isabella, decided to put their own people in power in what was going to be the international trading post to be able to do business now as Spanish people, not Moorish people, with the so-called original Americanos estados over here. That's what they refer to us as in the ancient treaties, like this, a treaty called the Te Deum. A-L space Maurikanuus Estados, meaning the Moorish or free Moorish estates that existed over here. This is where we get the term America from, is Americanos. So the Americanos, it was the deal. They wanted to come over here. That's why they didn't have no permission to come over here, because you had to be connected to one of the original Moorish families to do so. Because the people over here were the true descendants of the original bloodline, going all the way back pre-Atlantis and all of that, unified through the bloodline of Noah. So as the story went, those Moors now had to leave Spain. So those who were expelled got heated and moved down into the Barbary states. And what they did was they displaced those Moorish empires that was already there. Empires like Songhai, Timbuktu, all of that. All of those got absorbed into the new Moorish paradigm now that was now going to fixate itself around pushing its people back in power. Because through that place in Spain, we was able to occupy control over both hemispheres. That was like the universal White House. And so now that Isabella and them had this power, they were able to use that power to be able to bribe and bring people over here. So Cristobal Colon, being one of those privateers who, again, grew up under the Moorish occupation, grew up under the Moorish ideology and all of that, was able to come over here because the Moors had already won the right through the trade routes to come over here and do business with us. El Ghazi, when he finally revived at Morocco over there in Africa, the continent of Africa, he was seized by the head Bey at the time, taking up all his money, beat half to death, but they wanted to keep him alive just in case one of us from over here had to come over there and found out, yo, what happened? How y'all send these crazy Spanish people over here or whatever who acting like Moors, but now they call themselves Christians? So the idea to disinherit Moors out of their original land became the custom. So the way that you did that was by getting them to convert themselves to the form of Christianity. This was done through the so-called Vatican, because the Vatican at this time was a Medici front that was being used to perpetuate the denationalization and the acquisition of land by forcing people to adopt a false religion. Once the Moors would adopt a false Christianity, now the Vatican, being that it was under the jurisdiction of the Moorish Empire, now had the right to kill these Moors because they were committing treason against their own self. And then once they were adopted or converted into the Christianity and were murdered, now all those lands went to who? Those lands went to the Pope, the Vatican, the Medicis, you see what I'm saying? Who then started to split it up amongst themselves. Now they started practicing disinheriting Moors by proxy, meaning that they would start to build up a whole core of Caucasians that they refer to as Mamelukes, who they imported from Slovenia, gave them an aspect of Islam, right, the religion, and then used them to go into other Moors' lands and then disinherit those Moors, kill them, and then occupy those lands for a price. This continued between 1492 and 1666. By this time now, all of the Moors, what we to know from Alaska to Chile, all of these empires existed. There was a 13-zone, 48-state empire that went all the way from Alaska to Chile. The chief amongst them all was the Olmec bloodline that was also connected to the ancient Xiang dynasty through a navigator who was named Hu Shen, who came over here through the trade routes that the Naga people had with us going back thousands of years. The stock that came out of the cross-culture mixture of the indigenous Olmecs that was here, and then the Asian, dark Asian, or let's say black Hunnish Moors from Tartary, that produced what we call the Asiatic people, right? These Asiatic people then, and now today, would be referred to as the original so-called Native Americans or American Indians. This is where all the sub-tribes came from. The Yamasee was in Georgia, the Creek, the Southern Cree, the Wabanaki, the Palenque, the Kitwa, the Delaware, the Narragansett, the Nanticoke, the Montauk, the Panahasawa. All of these are Muslims. All of these are Moors. And when you look at the pictures of these people is wearing feathers and turbans with feathers and all of that. Ostrich feathers. Have you ever seen an ostrich native in America? Never, have you?
No.
Ask yourself this: where people in Europe where did they get oranges from? Name one place that's indigenous where the fruit that we know as oranges grow from. Where oranges come from? They come from either Florida, right? California, right?
Mm-hmm. No, Europe. No.
So that means that we had to take it back and forth. Right. So that means then that we wasn't on slave ships. We was on ships enslaving other people. But what happened is when you reap what you sow, you pay what you owe. And regardless of whether or not these people were whatever, we got to a part in our history where we began to lose sight of what was most important. And whenever something like that happens, there'll always be somebody inferior to move up and take your place. So as we jump now to 1774 now, this thing is rampant. You got Moors fighting Moors all over the planet, calling each other different names, getting into beef, coming back home. So we had to do something to make a delineation between us and everybody else to maintain our nationality. And so we got together through a series of treaties today that they call the Four Constitutions: the Article of Association, the Article of Confederation, the Bill of Rights, and eventually the Constitution. And then analogous to that, we had the Delaware, the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence by the descendants of King George through Queen Charlotte, who were already over here in North Carolina, the birthplace of Noble Jew Ali, as well as some of the other things like the Eagle Bowl Treaty that most black scholars don't even know about. And this is one of the main treaties that locked us in as the original, what they call the Big Buffalo people. Go to one of these so-called white Mexican Indians talking about, I'm descended from the Big Buffalo people. Watch what they do. The real ones, if they real, they'll drop to their knees like that because they know exactly what you're saying. But, again, due to the fact that it got to a point in history where it was too much, where it was too many dirty Moors, i.e. blacks or whatever you want to call them, that was willing to give up their birthright to these Lord Proprietors of the colony, these mulattoes. Because Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, all of these people is what we would today call light-skinned people. They look white now, but we didn't fall to no white man. How could we fall to somebody who never been nowhere? They told you they thought the world was flat. Why we give these people so much power when historically they tell you that they didn't have it? So what winds up happening is they will strike a deal. We make a delineation at the capital. Our capital at the time was at Philadelphia, Shechem-Mexem, a.k.a. Philadelphia. In the Egyptian hieroglyphs on the Egyptian records, it's called Philae. See? But we've been made to think that Philae, or just like El Hermana, just like these other so-called Egyptian places, was over there. Because nobody wants you to have what's waiting for you here. So what wound up happening was this. We drew a line in the sand and said, look, if you're calling yourself anything other than what it is we naturally always were, which means we came out of the union of the Six Nations, the so-called five civilized tribes, the so-called Algonquin or Haudenosaunee Confederacy, right? These are the things that they said they based the Constitution on. So they want you to think that Washington and Jefferson and them were sitting around watching these so-called white or Mexican Indians making this whole government thing up. And then they say, okay, we're going to base it on that. Why would you base your government off of what you said these people were, when they said that these people were savages. So why would you base a whole government on what you see the savages doing? Especially if they was just, cutting people's heads off and all this other shit, right? That's what they say.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what was happening. What was happening is that these Caucasian people only went where they were sold or brought to. And what happened was, on the colonies, those were the lands that were under the jurisdiction of George. George was our cousin. Don't you think it's funny that they was fighting the war against George, and the dude fighting the war for them against George was named George?
Right. Yeah.
You know, that's like saying that Jesus had a mother named Mary, but then his wife was named Mary too. That's convenient. No, what that is a lazy historian that couldn't come up with a name for somebody else when he was rewriting the history. So screw it. They ain't going to say nothing. Name them both the same thing. And that's what they did. They tell you. They said that they framed the Constitution, right? Don't they call themselves that, the framers?
Yeah.
Constitution. When you frame somebody, what you doing to them? You setting them up, right?
Yeah.
You making it look like they did something that they ain't do. So that's what happened with them. And so what happened was, now in the colony, it was like this. These people fought a war to get away from George. They call that the Revolutionary War. But the word revolution means to get back to. So how you breaking away from George and then going back to George at the same time? The only way you can do that is if you was doing it like this. So the Moors that was here was already here. They had to pay us rent. Then those same Lord proprietors, mulattoes, right, days of the colonies, they had to also pay George, who was their master, money for the businesses that they set up on his colony. So one day they just come to us and say, look, we will fight for you against the old decaying Moorish Empire if you free us. We said, okay, you can do that. And so they did that. That's why the war was only localized to the colonies. We wasn't involved with all of that.
Right.
We didn't let them bring that into the rest of the country. They had no jurisdiction outside of the 13 colonies. And back then, now what I'm talking about, England at this time is only the 13 colonies. Do the research. London, England didn't become that until 1885. So where was England at in 1700? It was right here. You see? They moved you from Africa to America with a pen. And so what they say is this. They went to the dirty Moors now that was outside of the Republic because they didn't want to go back to their nationality. They said, look, come with me into my country and help me build up the United States. And if you do that, I'll give you more gold than you was getting in your own country. Which was stupid because the Moors that they talking to this is dripping with gold. They come from the country with all the gold. So why would they do that? They did that to spite themselves because it was something in black people even back then where we was going through this self-hatred thing. And we was, for some reason, needed to bang on each other. And this is what the prophecy says, so this is what we did. The children of Israel was divided. So now, you're a Moor, right? You free in the Republic, meaning outside the colony. Once you agree to this scheme, you step on the colony. The first thing that happens to you is, boom, they take everything from you. Then the next thing they do is list you in their manifest as an enslaved African in England. Then they list you, they sell you to a slave catcher, and then ship you downriver, ship you down the river. You heard that term before, right?
Yeah.
Ship them down the river. This is where it comes from. They shipped you down the Mississippi River, which is the Blue Nile over here. But they listed the Mississippi River as the Atlantic Ocean on the manifest.
Mm-hmm.
And then they listed Greensville, Mississippi, or wherever you got on as the United States. So now, you were free walking up and down the block, right, until you stepped on the colony, right? You still in the same country, but it's just a different jurisdiction. Now in that colony, they done named you an enslaved African. They done named the colony England. They named the Atlantic Ocean, the Mississippi River, the Atlantic Ocean, and now they shipped you down into the United States. And then this process happened for 85 years straight. So by the time of the so-called Civil War, which really started amongst us, the Cherokees, right, it's now inbred in these people. Some of us got grandparents this old. 85 years. That's older than that. So think about this. This went straight hardcore. This chattel slavery mind control program went hardcore for 85 straight years. 85 years is not 400 years. like read a book, man. These African scholars telling us that there's 100 million Africans coming over here on slave ships from Africa, but can't provide a documentation of one slave ship, right, of one damn chain, right, or of any so-called Africans. Do you realize that they are talking about a 4-month trip, 3 to 4 month trip, where these boats didn't have no toilets, no bathrooms? Do you know what would happen if you packed slaves in like that? By the time these slaves would get to Jamestown, Virginia, you get them off the boat, you'd have to kill them if they wasn't already dead, because they would have drowned in their own urine and feces the first week. Mm-hmm. And you telling me you bringing 100 million of them over here? But again, this is what a Pan-Africanist believes. You understand? You understand? This is what they've been feeding our people, man. Because they, as Pan-Africanists, have taken oaths as well to keep the true aspect of your nationality secret, because they get money off of that. You mean to tell me if there's a way that I could declare a certain thing and I get access to my unlimited accounts and things like that I wouldn't want to do it? Yeah. If I could convince you that it's not real, if I could convince you that there's something else. But what else is there? Black people have done everything else in this place but declare their nationality, true nationality. And that was what we were supposed to do after the Civil War. Yeah, the Civil War. They popped Lincoln for that, because he opened up the 13th section, the 13th Amendment, with the 21 sections that nullified the 14th Amendment. But again, I just bust down to you exactly how Moors got enslaved and why they became Christian. Because once you adopt a Christian nationality, your original nationality, where your birthright and inheritance, all went to the church. And it's been that way ever since. Why do you think mega churches exist? Everybody in the world is living off of your original nationality as a descendant of the Moorish Empire. But you don't want to be in the Moorish Empire because a black man that told you that you were African. And because you, as black people, we place so much emotional emphasis and not objective, rational thought to what it is we believe, we get duped every time. That's why I don't believe when people, I've been on panels, you've seen me, I've been on panels with these people. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And when Adam, asking them straight up, so okay, well, what's your nationality then? You can't say African, because pull out your ID. If you ain't got no African passport or nothing, that means you fronting. You fronting, son. You fronting. I don't give a damn how many dashikis you wear. I don't care how big you grow your afro. I don't care how many red, black, green flags you got. It don't matter. Because what you're doing is telling me that I'm something that I'm not. I'm of African descent, but not African nativity. Because what it really is also, brother, is nobody wants the so-called black men and black women to have their own identity outside of anybody else. Why is that? Because yours is the first, and who was first shall be last, and who was last shall be first. And so the time has come now where everything is opening up and everybody's coming to the understanding that what they have placed their faith in was actually the distraction. You mean to tell me there was 1 million black men at the 20-year anniversary of the Million Black March, and they done killed 9 people since then? And these people, these are the ones that are supposed to tell me about my nationality and how strong it is to be a black man and black this and black that? When I say black, I'm talking about the triple stage darkness, the cosmic, eternal, black womb black, black woman womb black. That's what I'm talking about when I say that, right? But when these people are talking about black, they talk about like Angela Davis and Huey P. Newton and these people. You understand what I'm saying? Mm. There's a difference. The level of the game has elevated, man. And again, people can say what they want about Moors not being real, all of that. I've spoken to these government officials. I've spoken to the head of Homeland Security. You dig what I'm saying? Not on some, hey, well, I'm this, no. I'm telling him, look, I'm this. I was always this. I stepped into this seat. This is who I am. You need to do this and that. And you know what they said? No doubt. No doubt. Whatever you need, this is how it works. Because I'm not playing. It's not a game. What the prophet brought us is unimaginable. And I mean, even most Moors don't even realize it because most of these niggas is in church. Half of these temples is functioning as 501c3s, man. Half of these temples was reorganized after 1938 when the trader came and then set himself up and then started to change the doctrine and basically put these temples in the Blue Lodge. For those people that don't know what the Blue Lodge is, that's a lower degree in Freemasonry and Prince Hall Masonry. For those people who know but not really in the know. So they not even in the empire. What your forefathers were, you are today. What I explained today was exactly how it happened. Now, there's books and stuff you could get, diplomatic relations of the between the United States and the Barbary powers, Othello's Children in the New World, any books by Budget Meekin, who dealt with the Moorish Empire, Consecrated Talisman by Prince Uriel Bey, When Nations Gather by Sultan Abdul Latif, African presence in early America, African presence in early Asia, African presence in early Europe. What else? Sex and Race, Volume 1, 2, and 3, From Superman to Man. Lost Asiatic Kingdoms in America, America BC, Saga America. There's a book right now on the original American so-called Moors and Indians and all that, and this book is $15,585. This is how deep these niggas are in keeping your history from you. When I mentioned The Forgotten Cause, the book called The Forgotten Cause of the Civil War on my Blog Talk radio show, Super Hayward Radio, a week later somebody sent me a clip from Amazon. That book was selling for $21,000.
Wow.
You understand? I'm making these crackers money by exposing them. And black people still want to be something that they not. And then wonder why they get beat down and brutalized and killed every day. Because the Bible says, when you do not honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. The land, the name of your mother and your father is your ancient clannish name. So, for instance, we said, well, we got Indian in our family. How can we prove it? We could prove it because all these names that they done told you were slave names, those were the original names of the people that was already here. Because between 1600 and 1774, there was a cross-migration of Moors that were indigenous to this land, specifically in the eastern coast portions of the United States, and their cousins, our cousins, the mulattoes that came over from Albion, which we now call England or the United Kingdom. And that produced a cross-pollination of names. So, like my family name was Rogers, right? So I'm supposed to believe that I was enslaved by some white man. Right. Name was Rogers, right? And he raped my great-great-great-grandmother, and his gene was so this that they passed it down, and now I got to keep that. When have you ever seen a recessive dominate a dominant? I don't give a damn if you had 10 white men raping that one black woman. That black woman still won't produce a black baby. The only way Caucasian people can produce babies with each other is by having babies with each other. If they have a baby with anybody else on the planet, that baby, especially us, that baby coming out Asiatic. So your family name, Rogers, so I would be a Cherokee Rogers of the clan of Eel. You see? Mm-hmm. You would be a Choctaw Smith from the clan of Bay. See how it goes? But after we lost connection to the empire, our family names had to become our national names. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So now, instead of me being a Cherokee of the Rogers family, right, of the Rogers tribe, of the Eel clan, now I have to be a Cherokee of the Cherokee nation that's not affiliated with the greater empire. And now my name Rogers has to be take the place of they. But they is what connected me to the international aspect of my inheritance, which allowed me to go to anywhere on the planet and be received and hailed as the king. So over there in Africa, they was all killing each other to be one king. Over here, we was all kings. We was all queens. We was all sultans. We was all caliphs. They named the whole state after the queen Khalifa from the original caliphate of the Idrisid dynasty that set that up over there. But I'm supposed to believe what? That these people who became, you gotta understand, after they killed off all of the original so-called Autochtons, meaning Amerindian, a.k.a. Moors of old America, between the 1800s, between the beginning of the 1800s and the early 1900s, they filled up all the reservations with all of these white people, and they gave them Indian names. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And because now you were redesignated as a Negro because you didn't follow belong to Christianity thing. So now your all the space is gone. So while you left your house, everybody living in your house, you see what I'm saying? Eating, blowing it up or whatever, and they done turned you into the butler. So when we talk about the three levels of the trade, like I was saying in the beginning, the triangle trade was when they was kidnapping nobles and Moors from the original government over here and selling them and taking them to Europe and selling them as slaves, as Indians when they got off the boat. The middle passage was the destruction and genocide and the intermittent conflict that happened between North America and South America. The transatlantic slave trade now is when they was bringing POWs from so-called Africa, from the Moorish Empire, breaking up in Africa and bringing them here and mixing them in with the indigenous, the Alamanicanos Moors, which then switched up the bloodline, which then moved everybody. That's why they kept moving everybody. That's why it's so hard for us to stay in one place now. Because we don't know, and we following behind these brothers and who may have great intentions, but guess what? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. That don't make it right. So when you see Moors and they talking about Moorish history and all that or whatever, and they say, oh, I'm Bay this and I'm Bay that, actually see their ID, man. If they ain't got no type of other ID other than their temple card that has their free national name on it, they fronting. Show me a passport. Show me a state something from these crackers acknowledging you as that. Because when you make the devil bow to your will, everybody do. Same thing, when you go to these Pan-Africanists, they tell you all the glories of Africa and Egypt and all of that, right? Just like on the back of the dollar bill, oh, that's the Illuminati. That ain't got nothing to do with none of that, man. And all of that is fairy tales they're giving you. That's the symbol of your government. But they put a foreign pyramid on that dollar. Look at the money prior to 1774. You will find a step pyramid, the same step pyramid you see in Mexico, a.k.a. Mexico. But no, they'll give you a history, but they'll always put a lie in it. They'll always put something in it to make you doubt it. You got to know in your heart what you are. So I don't put no stock in no Bible, no Quran, no none of that. But at the same time, I can look and read all of that, get the spirituality out of it and not fall victim to it because, again, I'm a Muslim. I'm a Moor. I'm an Asiatic. I'm a child of the Most High. So that means these were books that I created to civilize the people that came after me. That's not for me to put myself under. We don't come from a cult. How many pictures you done seen of Autochton women walking around here with their breasts and everything out? It wasn't sexist and nothing back then, back in the 1700s, right? And these women was running continents, right? It only became decadent and all that stuff in this era that we in because it's not given a proper context. And the sisters is trying to follow behind these white women. They have colonized the minds of original people to such a degree that it's almost too late for them.
Well, one last question, Aseer, because the hour's about up. Real quick, I heard you mention, you mentioned a reference in the Bible as far as the children of Israel being divided. The only other group I've heard in the black community that say that we're not Africans is the Hebrew Israelites. So I want to ask you, what is the Moorish-Hebrew connection? Because I heard some Moorish brothers deal with that before. From your study, what is that our connection to the Hebrews?
There's a book you can get called The Light in the Day, where it gets into that specific. I have to get the author, but it's an older book. Moors are Hebrews, but Hebrews are not even Hebrews. Hebrews are actually Canaanites. After the great floods and all of that, the sons of Noah split from the sons of Ham. The demarcation line between the empire was the place today we call Ethiopia. So everything up from this side of the world up to Ethiopia represented the land of the father. Everything from Ethiopia back to the Far East and all that represented the land of the sun. That's why they call the Far East, the land of the rising sun, right? The so-called Hebrews, or what we call, the term Hebrew means people who crossed over. Those were the people who descended from Abraham that crossed over the great river being the Atlantic Ocean. And they sent their daughters, our people over here, sent our daughters, our queens, descendants, sent them over there to re-establish the bloodline. So that way they could have babies with the daughters of what they call Bled El Seba, meaning the lands of the lawless, the daughters of Bled El Seba. That's another name the Moors used to call this place. Because we were lawless over here. We were the law. So we didn't have no heavy rules and all that crazy shit that some other Africans and European Moors was dealing with. So from that cross-migration and that migration, that set up within the genetics of the people what is called the epigenetic transgenerational inheritance. That's a genetic inheritance coming all the way from the original Godfather Allah, from the beginning of time, the creation, all the way up to us right now. We have that DNA stored in us. That's why when we take the name Bay and Il at the end of our names, we are setting ourselves up back to be the true royalty of the planet, because those are the two oldest titles of nobility ever. So there was a section of those people that came out of Tamaray who were in disaccord with the greater political structure there, and they set out on their own. They then went and traveled all the way up into what we call Canaan, and then fought wars. But at this time, Canaan that we know, when they talk about the walls of Jericho falling, that Jericho, these walls that they talk about happen over here in Brazil in a place called Jericho-Acara. There's a book by a brother named Negus who wrote a book called Job Turkey, and it deals with all of this. Long story short, those so-called Hebrews adopted Canaanite theology, and they created a language based upon the Canaanite cuneiform that is actually another form of ancient Latin and ancient Punic, which was the language that was spoken that predate even hieroglyphs, showing you then that the pre-dynastic Kemet and all of that is over here. That's why the oldest pyramids of the world is over here. So specifically, this culture, this ancient Canaanite culture, thrived, and after the 7th century BC, moved up into Hispania, a.k.a. Spain, and then set up what today we call the modern aspect of Hebrewism. Then they, being that we were selling Caucasian people by the mass at this time, adopted a certain group of these Caucasoids from the Khazarian, from the Caucasus Mountains, and gave them an aspect of this so-called Hebrewism called Judaism, and then used them as money changers to then sell other Caucasian people who were brought to them. And so they couldn't speak Hebrew, so we gave them an aspect of that in their language, their better language, that was now called Yiddish. These people that you call Hebrew Israelites are actually Christians. You understand? But Jesus himself that they speak about was not a Christian. He was a Muslim. You understand? Not a Muslim now, but I'm talking about a Muslim. A Muslim is somebody from the ancient world that has all the Asiatic cultures synonified within them. A Muslim is one who strictly follows the Sunnah or religious aspect, fundamentalist aspect of Islam. But Islam predates the religion. And the Moors were the ones who brought that. So when we talk about, again, Hebrewism, these so-called Hebrew tribes, and then after the expulsion of Spain or whatever, pushed themselves back down, and after a certain amount of time, they asked permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to come over here and set up kingdoms, because they had already set up 4 kingdoms out of that. These tribes were the Canaanites, the Amorites, the Hittites, and I always forget the last one. But out of them, they created Morocco, Tunis, Tripoli, and Algiers. And so they hooked up with their cousins over here, asked permission from the pharaohs of Egypt. Back then, there was no term pharaoh over there. That's even a new term. They called their peoples over there Paharus or Nasut. That was the name of the ruler. The pharaoh, when we look at the etymology of that word, was an indigenous word of the Americas from a specific tribe called the Montaka, a.k.a. the Montauk. So when they asked permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to come over here and settle kingdoms again, they was talking about people over here. If they wasn't, then if I wanted to stay at your house, I would ask you. I wouldn't ask your neighbor, would I? Right. So again, what I'm talking about, my brother, is that our people suffer from the lack of common sense. Our people suffer from the lack of being led. And we are being led astray by brothers who may have had good intentions, but because they are narrow-mindedly looking at things in one way, that they are actually promoting the same white supremacy by not looking beyond their own individual prejudices against what they are. Because believe it or not, some of these same brothers that's pumping all of this shit is descended from the same ones that got us in this position in the first place. How about that? Because genetics don't change. They only evolve or mutate. So this is why I don't debate. I don't argue. I don't sit there and try to get other people to see how I'm saying it is the truth. I already know what it is for me. Enough that I've proved it to the same government that has been trying to kill me since I've been born. And they have acknowledged it to the point that they have received and sent me certain documentation, therefore, that you get the rest of these crackers to back up off me. But they not my problem. My problem is the Negroes or the Negropeans or the dirty Moors or the Pan-Africanists or whoever else is trying to convince me and my son and my woman that we came from Africa and that we had no protection against 3 ships that came from nowhere and killed over 100+ million people from Alaska all the way to Chile. If you believe shit like that, then you've got to believe the white man God. There's no way that I could talk to you about nothing. If you believe that, you believe anything. If you believe that you could be in slavery longer than a country that you in exists, there's something wrong. If you believe that you are African American, but you can't give me one lick of proof that you're from Africa or anybody in your family is from Africa. My grandmother, blessed her dead, this chick went out with the ambassador to Gambia. I grew up with the ambassador to Gambia in my house. And when I started going through my little fake Pan-Africanism from listening to, X-Clan and the rest of these brothers and stuff, you know what I mean? The first thing that nigga told me, you're not African.
Wow.
You're not African, Charlie. You're not. And I would argue with him. Yes, but show me where you're from Africa. Where? You're not. They're lying to you. This is what he was telling me. You understand? So it wasn't until I got later in years now. Show you how it works. So I would have these discussions in front of my grandmother and all that. She would sit there and act like she didn't know what we was talking about. One day I got knowledge of self, boom, came into Moorish science, got my first fed, feeling good, walked into the crib. She looked at me, the first thing she said, oh, you a Moor now? I looked at her, I was like, what? You know what that is? She was like, yeah, I know the L's and the Bays and all that. I said, so I'm looking at her son. Like, so you knew this all these years? You knew this shit existed? And you let me walk around here with red, black, and green medallions and all this other shit? That's when I realized, man, these people have sworn oaths to keep us in this position, bro. Both white people, black people, all that. Black people are the only people in the world that's preyed on by every other race, especially their own. So for every cop that kill a black man, there's 3 other murders that can happen at the hand of a black man against a black man. You understand? Mm-hmm. What we're witnessing with these murders and all that, this is a culling. For those people that know what a culling is, when the herd get too thick, you got to start killing off some of the sheep. And that's what they're doing. Because they know as the paradigm shift is happening, where all of these international forces that were down with the old Moorish Empire, you think it's coincidence that the Moroccan flag is red, the Chinese flag is red, the Russian flag is red, and these are the biggest countries right now putting the hurting on the United States and Africa to the point where they done bombed them so much out of Syria, they now going to invading Cameroon. I bet you ain't hear no Pan-Africanists talking about this. Because these niggas don't know what they talking about, man. And I'm not trying to diss nobody in particular. I'm talking about everybody in general. This is also why I don't debate and all that, because I watched how these so-called black people, conscious black people, whatever, created this whole debate culture that destroyed the conscious community. And ain't nobody talk about that. Now I'm watching niggas that participated in the destruction of the conscious community now coming out talking against it. Oh, we shouldn't have been debating and all that. Nigga, you was the main one. You hear what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But I'm not one for the constant talking like that. I'd rather deal with the people, deal with people who really want to really get free, really want to access your estate that exists for you here now, not in Africa, but now, where you can take it and get aspects of it all over the planet because everybody's waiting for you to wake up. I done spoke to diplomats, dignitaries, and they all telling me the same thing. I got on my feds, they got on their thing, and they like, yo, once all your people wake up, it's over. But for those that are fit for it. And I don't think most of our people are really ready for that. So some people are going to have to come back and do it all over again. Not me, man. This is my last go around. I'm trying to see the next level of this thing.
Well, I definitely appreciate you bringing much clarity on this whole topic. Like I said, it's a very confusing topic within our community. We hear so many different angles on this whole Moorish paradigm. So everybody says you're well versed. So it was a pleasure to have you on the show. Leave the people. I know a lot of people are going to want to hit you up, get in contact with you. Leave the people any type of contact information you want to so they could get in touch with you, Brother Aseer.
Thank you, Lord. Anybody wants to holler at me directly about private consultations, anything like that in terms of dealing with identity consolidation and all of that, hit me up at houseofel@hotmail.com. That's HOUSEOFEL@hotmail.com. If you would like to send donations to our work to help facilitate the work that we're doing, please do so through our PayPal at dukeoftears@gmail.com. That's DUKEOFPIERS@gmail.com. You could also check out some of my work on YouTube. Just type in Aseer, the Duke of Tears. You could also check out some of our a lot of our classes that we've been doing for the past, almost 9 years now. We're now starting to let them out to the public, and there's great clarity. Like you said, for clarity, I got it to my own horn. They really that dope, and it clears up a lot of this confusion that these dirty Moors and the rest of these people is putting out here. So you could check that out at www.aseerthedukeoftears.com. And you could also check out some of our classes also on gumroad.com, GUMROAD. Just type in my name, Aseer, the Duke of Tears, and you'll see the whole host of classes and all that. And they're very affordable and very, very informative. And like I said, I'm not trying to scream on nobody and go all that. I'm just saying I know what I know. And I know what I've proved, and I know what I've gone out and got myself. And none of these other Moors, none of these other people that I was coming up with was really putting it out like that. So when I got to the point where I'm asking certain questions, and the people who's got almost 100 people in their lecture, they straight lying in my face, whatever, that's when I knew, no, if you want it, you got to get it. And now that I've got it and really getting it, I'm seeing why they've sworn these oaths to keep it secret and to make it confusing. It's not confusing. If you listen to anything that I said tonight, you could see that it's a lot clearer than people want to make it. It's just that you got to know your history. That's why the ancient adage of knowing thyself and thou shalt know all things is real. Don't let people box you in and tell you that you're something that you're not. Don't let people remake your history. Don't let people disinherit you and take you away from your indigenous land where you ain't been nowhere else. Don't let people lie and take your soul for a loaf of bread, man. And don't get caught up in this fake, racist, white supremacist, black supremacist paradigm where everybody's angry and nobody is producing nothing but hot air and talking and all of that. Like I said, a lot of the Hebrew Israelites, they all Christians. So again, you know all of this, but you're still putting yourself under the same doctrine that they take you out. What I like about them is that they always be garbed out. They always be heavy Moorish garbed out. But of course, they're not going to call it Moorish. You know what I'm saying? Right. Because they get money from the United States of churches as a 501c3 to do all of that. That's why they can sit out there and call the white man the devil, all that, because they still funded by the same devil that they're against. Same thing with some of these Moors. When they killed that Moor, Al-Mansur Bey, they swept that under the rug real quick. That was an international killing, but obviously not, because those Moors may not have international connections to be able to take it to the world court and all of that. I do. And I'm just a nigga from Brooklyn, you know what I'm saying, that grew up the same way everybody else did. So if I could get it, ignorance of the law, no excuse, man. We all got a role to play in this. And if we don't, somebody's going to step in your role and play it for you. So let's stand up and be men, man. Let's stop all of this back and forth fighting. You not a Moor, you not a this, you not a that. When all of the documentation, real evidentiary evidence is proven right to that fact.
Indeed.
So again, my brother, thank you for having me on.
Yes, yo. This Brother Rich, man, this was an amazing, dynamic show. Everybody who wants some more clarity, I urge y'all to contact this man to get some information about your birthright, where you're from, your bloodline. Like I said, it's a very important topic. It's something important that we need to know. This is Brother Rich, Underground Railroad Radio, with the brother Aseer, the Duke of Tears, and we signing out, family. Peace.
Peace. Islam.